Hey, so I think Russia may have lied, which is crazy, I know. But 3 weeks ago, Putin said that Kupyansk had fallen, that 5,000 Ukrainian soldiers were trapped in the city, and he was so confident that he even invited the international press to come and see for themselves and document that Russia had really, finally, taken this eastern Ukrainian city. I don't think anyone really took him up on, well, from the press. I mean, Ukrainian soldiers and drones did, and as of today, it looks like they've recaptured a good chunk of Kupyansk. In terms of visitors, Zelensky was there today, meeting with the troops doing that fighting. And the Russian media are fired up, pointing fingers in every direction, calling for investigations as to who could have possibly misled Putin about the situation at the front. So let's dive into what we know. Starting with a look at DeepState map here, we've got Kupyansk right in the middle of the screen, kind of northeastern Ukraine. We'll zoom in here, and one of the reasons I like DeepState map is we can change the territorial control day by day. That's going to be important here. Now, what you're seeing on the map, the green is territory held by Ukraine, red, territory held by Russia, and the gray is the gray zone, contested areas. This map is showing territorial control, or the general front lines, as of yesterday, December 11th, 2025. We're going to move forward to today. That is a pretty big chunk. All of that blue is now being reported under Ukrainian control, having been cleared of Russian forces. Now, this is not just being reported from Ukrainian analysts, but Russian as well. And we'll run through both of those in today's video. This chunk of territory looks to be the largest single-day change in territorial control that we've seen in months, maybe a year or more. This is pretty significant. Now, looking at the first analysis here from DeepState Map, they say as a result of a successful operation by the defense forces, the enemy was blocked in Kupyansk and the entire northwestern outskirts of the city were cleared. They say a difficult and lengthy operation is ongoing. As Russian enclaves still exist in the central part of the city, we are publishing the information that is safe to talk about now. So down here, when we zoom into Kupyansk, they still do show a couple areas where they say Russian forces are holding out. They say the operation began with the creation of a blocking line and the cutting off of the enemy garrison in the city from the main forces, happening up here to the north. They said they then moved through these three cities, Radivka, Holubivka, and Kinternishka. No way I got that last one right. Before eventually shifting southwest to Moskova. So it looks like they came in from the northwest here, cutting off Russia, preventing them from resupplying their troops down. And I wonder if they've got some sort of fire control over here in the east as well, preventing any reinforcements through this gray zone. As Deep State says, the defense forces continue to identify and destroy scum in the central part of the city, where the Russians have several enclaves where they were forced to retreat. The operation is ongoing. Now, we do have some footage coming from the 425th showing active operations in Kupyansk. We'll show throughout today's video. There's also a video from a couple different videos of Ukrainian President Zelensky on the outskirts of Kupyansk near the city sign and then meeting with the soldiers engaged in these operations. Now, when it comes to the video of Zelensky on the outskirts of the town, my belief, and we'll go back a day actually to show this, I believe it's right here. So the area that he it's the entrance to the city, right? It's not the city center. The sign showing you have now entered Kupyansk is on the outskirts of the city. But either way, we're talking about, let's pull up a ruler here. If this is the location, you're talking about 1.5 kilometers from the nearest Russian forces. That's pretty close and pretty safe to say well inside of drone range when this map was accurate as of a couple days ago. But moving over to some of these Zelensky videos, he said, "Today I'm in the Kupyansk sector with our warriors who are getting the job done for Ukraine. The Russians kept going on about Kupyansk, and the reality speaks for itself. I visited our troops and congratulated them. Thank you to each and every warrior. I am proud of you, and thank you to all of our land forces. Today is your day." Now, before shifting over to the Russian assessment of how things are going, and spoiler alert, they're not only confirming this action, but they're pretty pissed, calling it taking cities on credit and wondering who needs to be held accountable for this type of false reporting. Quick update on a fundraiser. Always excited to share this with you guys. So we teamed up with Car for Ukraine like just a couple days ago to pick up 4 pickup trucks for frontline units. We're working with 2 different units. Actually jump down here to that section. We've got the 26th Artillery that put out this nice video thanking you all for your support, and then the 2-man Special Forces Detachment of the 1st Separate Corps of the National Guard of Ukraine, Azov. That's a mouthful. So 2 trucks to each one of these units. We picked up over 9,000 euros already because you all are incredible. We're trying to get these over to them as quickly as possible. This group, Car for Ukraine, has delivered over 800 vehicles already. They know what they're doing. And one of the important pieces here is these vehicles, these 4, are already in country. They're in Lviv, ready to go. We just have to pay for them, and they're being shipped east to these 2 units at the front. The reason that's important is usually vehicles need to be sourced from Europe. So from the time we raise the funds, make the purchase to the delivery of the vehicle, it can be 1, 2, 3 months sometimes even. Not in this case. The guys need vehicles. They ask for some help, and I think we can get these to them ideally before the holidays even. And of course, you got to do a quick update on the leaderboard. This one's unique in that they actually have a leaderboard where they're trying to raise 110,000 euros total. Right now, all of us, we're in second place. And I have a feeling that in the next 24 or 48 hours, we might be number 1. I think we're going to get there. But either way, awesome update here, or awesome to see all of the incredible donations, incredible generosity from you all pouring in on this fundraiser. Now, shifting back over to the Russian assessment, we've got Russian mill blogger Kirill Fedorov, who is calling for investigations as to what actually happened here. He said, after reports of a Ukrainian offensive on Kupyansk, Zelensky himself arrived here to record an address at the site of these coordinates. Recall that Gerasimov and the commander of the Western Group reported on the complete liberation of the city and the encirclement of as many as 15 battalions of the Ukrainian armed forces. Later, Putin invited journalists to visit Kupyansk, but Zelensky arrived and left peacefully. I wonder if there will be any investigations into the credits of cities after this when the Supreme Commander is being set up. Something to keep in mind there is if Putin so confidently is stating that Russia controls Kupyansk when clearly they did not, and for what it's worth, at the time, Ukraine pushed back and said that's not true. There's very active fighting throughout the city, but Russia went with it. Their mill bloggers, their media all ran with it. Again, they had the president of Russia making a public statement that journalists should go see for themselves that, yes, they had captured the entirety of the city. There were a couple different mapping services that tend to align more with Russian sources that were very quick to go with that and say, yep, all of Kupyansk has now fallen. But even when those initial claims came out, we're still getting footage of Ukrainian strikes happening all throughout the city of Kupyansk. Military informant says a clear example of what happened. This is a clear example of what happens when you have to pay a serious penalty for victory reports on credit. Over the past few days, the situation in Kupyansk has seriously escalated. Having taken advantage of insufficient consolidation of the Russian armed forces in the city and bragging reports about its complete capture, the enemy launched counterattacks. He said a similar situation already occurred in the spring of 2025 in Toretsk, when the part of the city that remained under the control of Ukraine was, quote, liberated on credit, ceasing active pressure on the enemy, after which the Ukrainian armed forces carried out a series of successful counterattacks, driving out the Russian armed forces from many positions within the city. As a result, the battles in Toretsk continued for months after the official statement on its capture. And that's something to keep in mind here as we go back to the map. It's less, to me at least, it's less about the status of Kupyansk. And look, there's a lot of Russian pressure in the east. We should not be surprised at all to see kind of a steady advance of Russian forces in the areas where they're pressing, including Kupyansk. But what we're seeing here is something that, to what military informant was saying, happened in Toretsk and maybe elsewhere along the front going forward, is the Russian forces were quick to say, we took it. We captured Kupyansk. What happens when you move that up the chain of command then is commanders start to reallocate resources. If you needed, say, 3 batteries of artillery and 2 battalions of drones to take Kupyansk, once it's taken and you're established into the defense, you likely need fewer, and you can move half of those artillery batteries and maybe all of those drone units or 90% of the drone units elsewhere along the front. And this is an argument for what we may have seen around Pokrovsk a little over a month ago, when Russia had claimed victory very quickly and said we've taken it entirely, and then the offensive action kind of dialed back a little bit. There's a real question think about it in this way. If you're the commander trying to take Pokrovsk and you say, we did it, we took it, the city is now ours, and then 5 days later you say, I need reinforcements because we are attacking Pokrovsk, the logical question is, I thought you took it. What do you need more people for? So how many times up and down the chain of command is somebody sending maybe a little overly optimistic report? Each way, it's like the game of telephone, right? Each time it gets a little more exaggerated, if not just outright made up. And by the time it gets to the top, you don't need any more troops because Pokrovsk, or in this case, Kupyansk, has completely fallen. That's where I think this comes into play elsewhere along the front, and is something with the small elements moving in. And we're seeing it in Pokrovsk, we're seeing it in Kupyansk, where small groupings, this was not a battalion-sized effort that pushed into Kupyansk, individual soldiers, sometimes moving through a pipeline up north. And once they got in here, they didn't consolidate. And it's very hard to consolidate individual soldiers, onesies and twosies. I mean, a great example of this is anybody who's watched Band of Brothers, the challenges on D-Day when the airborne troops are scattered all across Normandy. Trying to figure out how to consolidate and fight in some sort of cohesive manner is really, really hard. So in this case, when Russia is able to get 1, 2, 5, 10, 30 soldiers scattered throughout Kupyansk, to get them into some sort of cohesive defense of the city is a monumental task. And while these infiltration tactics seem to be effective at Russian flag raisings and being able to shift the gray zone further and further into Ukrainian territory, no doubt, in terms of their ability to consolidate those positions and hold those territories for the long haul, we haven't really seen that quite yet. Now, it's not just the situation in Kupyansk. We got some pretty interesting other assessments here in recent days, one coming from the Freedom of Russia Legion. I'll play this video here. This was an operation that took place about 10 kilometers southwest of Pokrovsk. In fact, it might be helpful, pull up the map here to show you where it looks like this took place, if my mapping here is accurate. I believe it was right in this area here you're seeing on the map. So if we go to the ruler, again, I think it was a little further in this area here. Anyways, it's behind the front lines, all right? So this was an operation released today by the Freedom of Russia Legion, where they say our reconnaissance groups penetrated the enemy's rear in the Pokrovsk direction and destroyed a drone position of the 7th Company of the 35th Motorized Rifle Brigade. Taking advantage of the weather and terrain, our group, unnoticed, entered the area of the control point where a firefight on the enemy's position was carried out. The element of surprise allowed us to completely destroy all personnel at the control point with practically no resistance from the enemy. They say after completing the task, they all returned safely to Ukrainian territory, having killed 1 Russian, captured 1, destroyed some of the equipment and maps and other intelligence. They say the result was confirmed by data from internal sources of the 35th Brigade itself and intercepts. And I think this shows just how permeable some of the lines are. You know, a lot of the talk has been, understandably so, that Ukraine, being on the defensive, is not able to have, 1 man every 5 meters, and large chunks of territory are largely held by drones at this point. That's a two-way street. Russia does not have, and we'll just go west of Pokrovsk a little bit, we should not assume that Russia has a soldier every 10, 15 meters all along this front at all. And it was just evidenced by the fact that the Freedom of Russia Legion was able to infiltrate, seemingly on foot, probably unlikely, they drove a vehicle back there, carry out that operation and get out safely. So the line is permeable all across the front. We also got some new footage overnight of the Ukrainian GUR striking a Russian AN-26 aircraft while it was fueled up and taxiing for takeoff in Crimea. The initial reports are that the aircraft was destroyed and the crew killed. And they put out a statement saying on December 10th through 11th, there was another rumble in the temporarily occupied Crimea. The invaders were preparing to take off on a multi-purpose military aircraft transport AN-26 and had even started the engines. But the crew of the Russian occupiers was strictly forbidden to carry out an illegal flight by the masters of the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's special GUR unit, Phantoms. They hit the left turboprop engine with precision. Also in this clip, we see that Ukraine was able to effectively strike a couple different radar systems used for air defense assets like the S-300 and S-400. Anytime Russian aircraft are hit, we're of course looking to the frustration by Russian mill blogger Fighter Bomber, who said, quote, "I wonder, why use airfields that are within range of enemy drones' remote control against which there is actively no defense at the airfields? Why continue flights? What's the point if an air alert has been declared? What was the importance of this lab's flight during the attack? Why are the crews in the planes during a drone attack instead of shelters? The result is predictable and inevitable." I don't think we've seen an aircraft taxiing on the runway get hit quite yet. We've, of course, seen plenty of aircraft, the fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft hit by Ukrainian drones over the course of the last few years, but I think this is the first on the runway. And it is kind of surprising that if there is any notification that these drones were inbound, what on earth were they doing? And you would think that they would find a shelter rather than trying to take off, because that thing hit in the air is, probably even worse than being hit on the ground, right? But either way, we are seeing kind of a continuation. This stuff's kind of flying under the radar, no pun intended, but constant Ukrainian drone attacks against Russian air defense assets in Crimea. There's a breaking point there. I don't know where it is, but these radars are expensive and hard to manufacture, and they're very, very sensitive. So taking a drone to the nose, if not completely destroying the radar, likely puts it out of commission for a long time. It'd be interesting to see what the radar coverage is over some parts of Crimea now, after it's been, years of these radars being hit constantly. There just can't be that many in the Russian Federation. I wonder if at some point we're going to see maybe the airspace has been opened up just enough for some sort of, unlikely that it would be Ukrainian manned aircraft, maybe some long-range munitions like Storm Shadow, Scalp ER, ATACMS, or who knows, maybe one of these days even Tomahawk missiles. If those radars are down, it's a little higher likelihood those are able to get through. But that's all we got for now. Again, for those interested and able, please check out the fundraiser in the link below to help pick up a couple pickup trucks for 2 different units fighting at the front. But thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.